It is 1 o'clock. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. We continue SEC Media Days coverage from the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. Alabama coach Nick Saban was first this morning, followed by Vandy head coach Clark Lee, who announced the starter going into fall camp at the quarterback position. It is Mike Wright, who is also present in Atlanta for Media Days. Mike Leach done talking, and South Carolina's Shane Beamer will be the fourth and final head coach to speak today. 3HL is broadcasting live from Media Days through Thursday, presented by Brentwood Hearing. Nashville Soccer Club made it official this morning as the club announced the signing of right back Shaq Moore from Spanish second division club Tenerife. The 25-year-old has 15 appearances with the U.S. men's national team. An All-Star weekend continues, or All-Star week, I should say, as the All-Star game is tonight in Major League Baseball from Los Angeles, a 7 p.m. first pitch. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once, and your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. So SEC Media Days continues, and Bryce Young is making the rounds right now. Sat down, and Blaine's making proclamations. As I said, you think that dude can win the Heisman again? And what did you say?
I said he's going to win back-to-back Heisman, which I don't think anybody's done that at Alabama at quarterback.
Only one person's ever done it, Archie Griffin.
Right,
yeah.
Archie Griffin. But at quarterback, because there was a history there at Alabama, no quarterbacks have won the Heisman. Now they won it so many times in a row now. But yeah, he's going to win the Heisman, as well as I think Alabama's going to go undefeated and win the national title. Oh, great, eye-popping prediction, right? I just think they're going to be on another level after, losing to Georgia. You just got to know how Nick Saban is wired. So they X out A&M. A&M's going to lose that game. And then Georgia beat them. And then how does Georgia actually respond from being the hunted instead of being the hunter? It's unusual territory for them. I think they'll slip up. So, Alabama will be back at the top of the mountaintop. Their toughest team may be actually Lucas's favorite team, Tennessee.
Ooh.
That'd probably be there. Because if people go back and watch that game, because I've watched that game numerous times because I thought Tennessee could get them. And I forgot what was the turning point, but it was in the second half. I think it was a turnover or a drop ball.
Yeah, it was an interception.
Interception, yeah. And that really kind of changed. And then Bama kind of pulled away there. Mm-hmm. But before that, it was back and forth. They were blowing coverages. They was messing up. And I just love to see Nick Saban stressed. I love to see him stressed.
Don't see it often. Yeah.
Right, because one time one guy was sleeping at the wheel at corner, and they just ran right by him like he was not even ready to go because they snapped the ball so fast. So I think, and then that's going to be at Tennessee this year, right? Because it was at Alabama.
And if Tennessee is able to get a win against Florida and LSU in Baton Rouge, it'll still be really early on in Brian Kelly's first season. Then you're looking at a potential matchup of two 5-0 teams in Neyland Stadium.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I'm predicting that Tennessee's going to win 10 games. They're only going to lose to Alabama, which I just said is going to give them the biggest battle. But Alabama's going to be undefeated, but it's going to be a close game, especially at home. And then I think they only lose to Georgia. That's it. I think they're going to win 10 games. I went through their schedule today in my mind, playing it out. Now, they can have some close games that they squeak by. We're talking about Kentucky, South Carolina, Florida. I think are those guys, those are the ones on the schedule that I think they're gonna beat them. They have the confidence. They know they're good. What Hendon Hooker did last year, if he just plays as well as he played last year, and I'm not saying he could throw more interceptions, but he could also play better too because he's playing more. So if he has 31 and 6 or 35 and 10, he still plays solid. I'm interested to see if some point that he doesn't read half the field, or is that just what's taught by Heupel and crew? But it's been successful in college football, so why do you go and kind of change it a little bit? But sometimes, there were times where he wasn't open, he was running. So the danger here for me is only that Hendon Hooker gets injured. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about not a significant, but where he misses 2 or 3 games. And then Milton comes in and plays solid, and you then now all of a sudden have a quarterback battle. He starts looking like what they thought he was going to be when he transferred there. And that can disrupt some things. I think Hooker runs a little too like he's Michael Vick or somebody, which he's a good runner, but he's not on that kind of level. And that means you're going to take some shots. So you got to say he's a tough cookie. But, yeah, I was going through the schedule, watching SEC, interviews and SEC media days and everything else. It made me kind of start going through and seeing where I think teams will be outside of Georgia and Alabama and actually Tennessee.
Tennessee's got to get by Ball State first.
Oh,
Your Cardinals, chirp.
Well, that'll probably be over at halftime. At least that's how it's supposed to be.
They're favored by 31.5.
Yeah.
So,
I don't look at the odds, but that's what
Han Solo said. I never look at the odds. Ball State at Tennessee.
Well, maybe my son will hopefully get a chance to get in there.
I hope so. We need to go see that rascal. Tennessee at Pittsburgh week 2. They owe Pittsburgh one. You got to go beat Pittsburgh.
They have to beat Pittsburgh.
If the right quarterback had started against Pittsburgh last year, they would have beat
And they
him.
don't have the veteran quarterback, so it'll be a first-year starter. So that advantage goes to Tennessee to me.
All right, so let's say 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
Akron comes in next.
Oh, no. Yeah, come on now. The Zips.
Florida comes in next.
I actually like them getting Florida early because I don't think all the things will be revved up by then. They're always going to have talent because it's Florida.
Always.
But I think they won't be ready. It's going to be where? At Florida or?
No, it's at Tennessee.
Yeah, that is a win. Tennessee's got it.
Then that goes from the 24th to the 8th, so I guess a bye week in between. Lucas, you could tell me if that's right or not. Then they go to LSU. And that one is – the game time isn't set yet. But if I'm LSU, I'm like, yeah, we like to play that at night. Let's kick that off at 7. TV.
So that's the week before the Bama game. You're LSU, the week after the bye.
That's a tough one. But I just think first year, Kelly, quarterback, they really have like 3 quarterbacks are vying to play there. And so I just think that's going to disrupt a lot of things, whether somebody plays tight or bad, and then do you put the other guy in? Do you go with the other guy? Do you go with the guy that's more mobile, the transfer from Arizona State, the starting quarterback from there? Forgot his name, Daniel something. Forgot his name, but he can move around. But, you got a returning quarterback. I just think there's going to be a lot of moving parts. He's got to figure some things out. I still think they're going to get him, even though it's at LSU. I think they're going to get him. They have offensive lineman issues there as well.
So at LSU, then the next week they come home and host Alabama.
I think this is going to be really close. I mean, at home too. It's just hard to go against Alabama, and I'm picking them to go undefeated. So I have to say they're going to win this game. But I think this is going to be a nail biter. Mm-hmm. This is going to rival. What was the time when Saban didn't like the no huddle offenses?
Yeah.
This is where this is going for him as a head coach, and actually he's got his 2 coordinators back. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about their business, because I think now Tennessee play better. They know their players better. They've recruited better. Eventually, they're going to start hitting and hitting people in the gut, and they're going to have to give it their best shot. And this is going to be one. But this is a telling game for me, though. As much as I'm picking Alabama, I really believe there's a possibility. I'm waiting lead up to that game. I may change my mind and go against Alabama in this game.
Oh,
If they're playing like they should be. They have returning players at all unique positions. And, by the way, there's some players that we haven't even seen yet play for Tennessee, and some that we have that they should be better. Well, we're talking about receivers that they recruited from other schools that were high-level players, to Jalen Hyde. If he even shows half of what he did the year before, I think the issue here is just my observation. I've been pretty much on point on all their receivers and putting Felix Jones in the slide because he's a return guy and he's not an outside guy. I think what happens with Jalen Hyatt is he's not actually a physical player to play outside, because you have to be tall, but you got to be physical to get off the line because you're on the line. So then you can say, but he's really not a jitterbug. He's more speed if you put him on the slot where people can't touch him. So he's not the quick and lateral guy. He's a vertical guy. Mm-hmm. And guess what Pruitt did? Of all the things that he did good, this was one of them. He used them in this manner. Think about all the passes he caught when he was with Pruitt. It was all vertical plays out of the slot because he needed to be off the ball and no one could get their hands on him, which is hard to do in the slot. And then he just outruns people.
yeah.
So outside the corner with the 6'1" long arm corners, most of the time you're not having success off the line. So it'll be interesting to see if he's gotten better and can he actually do both now pretty well. I'm interested to see how they implement him, let alone the competition there with some other players that are developing or transfers in. So I think that's the issue with Hyatt. It has nothing to do with his talent. It's at the top, but that shows you have to have a unique ability. Here's the difference between him and Cedric Tillman. Not only his size and his strength, Cedric Tillman's off-the-line release is insane. It's almost like he's a 5'10" Velus Jones. That's what makes him good, because if you go clock him in a 40, he probably is going to run like a 4.5, but his in-game speed and releases are off the charts. And that's where Jalen Hyatt they get physical with him, and then he has trouble. So it'll be interesting to see if he's fixed all of those things.
And in the SEC, the guys covering you outside are NFL cornerbacks.
Yeah,
you're getting covered by a bunch of dudes.
When you're talking about LSU, Alabama, they got Florida. Those dudes got history. They take them to the league. So I think that's the issue, and everybody talks about Jalen Hyatt. Well, until he overcomes that and they implement ways to use him, he's not. And then I got upset with hype on those guys. Then they try to use him like he was Velus Jones, like do him on a verse. That's not his stick. That's not his stick. His stick is he's a vertical route runner. Use him to that. That's it. Now, all the other stuff, he got to learn how to be better at releases. That's all coaching, and he has to do it on his own too as well. I'm sure he knows those things. I thought it was more that than anything else. And then he had some dropsies, and he lost a little bit of confidence.
Yeah.
Those two things can add up and can be really big and can cost coaches jobs. So they had to kind of, all right, we'll move you to the side till you overcome some of these things.
I remember we were talking to Doug Matthews before the season last year, and he was talking about Jalen Hyatt, and everybody was picking Hyatt as kind of like that's the breakout candidate. That's the guy. That's the guy.
Based off, I think, what did he have? 400-something yards receiving his freshman year, or he had. I mean, it may not have been that much, but he had, signs to show you. But see, everybody's just looking at the stats instead of evaluating him as a player, like I would do. And, most fans are going to just say, oh, next year he should blow up, which, you thought he would. But he had to continue to grow and work on his game. And I think he really didn't. He thought, I'm going to come back and I'm going to just dominate what I've been doing.
Well, he's talked about that. He's talked about taking things for granted and his work habits not being right last year and how this offseason's been different. And it's easy to say those things during spring practice.
Yeah.
But in 2020, he caught 20 balls, 276 yards, 2 touchdowns. In 2021, 21 catches, 226 yards, same amount of touchdowns. But the hype was around Hyatt and not a guy like Javonte Payton, who ended up being Tennessee's best deep threat last year. Jalen Hyatt was on the Athlon Sports cover for Tennessee last season going into 2021.
Well, some people need to quit reading their press clippings.
Boy.
And go to work and go grind. And work on your weaknesses and understand your weaknesses and continue to grow. Remember, I always talk about this, make your weakness become your strength. Because that's what happens when you get in the league, too, though. Some of these guys get in the league and they just start doing the same stuff they always done. Well, how are you getting better? Then you're the same player you were when you got here. That's on you. That's why you see Big Jeff and them going to, pass rush academies and DB and wide receiver. Yeah, so they can get better at some of those things that they're not really good at.
I told you my friend DeMario Davis, the guy who's gotten better as his career's gone on, and the thing about him was can't play in space, can't cover. So what did he do? He went and got a receivers coach and chased him around in the sand for 2 or 3 summers in a row to work on his coverage with a receivers coach. Like, okay, show me how to cover you.
Yeah. Well, what happens is you come into the league, and if you're really a player that's really motivated to be the best that you can be, you're always going to work on those things, weakness, because you know them before everybody else does. So it's on you.
It's on us to get to the next segment. Mark Heim, who covers the SEC and more for AL.com Media Days, rolls on. Nick Saban spoke today. There's a lot of Alabama-related stuff and a lot of SEC stuff to get to, and we will do that all coming up next with our buddy Mark Heim. You do not want to miss it. He is fantastic. Blaine and Mickey 1045 The Zone. We just had a lengthy discussion in the break about Drew Bennett. We're going to have a hitman break that down one of these days. My son and his friend were at a card show this weekend.
Bad man.
And they had a table full of old Titans jerseys. His son's name is Bennett, and they found a Drew Bennett jersey. And he talked the guy down to $100. So he got him a Drew Bennett, and it was when he was still wearing 19, which I think is just the coolest before he switched to 83. When it was like the "you may not be here" long number.
Yeah, that was that's exactly. Don't let that fool you. That's all I was telling Mickey in training camp. Do not let it fool you, because we all knew as DBs, like, hey, this dude is the real deal. You better quit messing around. We're gonna be making fun of you in film when we go back and watch these one-on-ones. Yeah, Samari Rose was like, "Hey man," called him what they call him, Sunshine.
Sunshine.
Yeah, Sunshine. They gave him a nickname. Once you get nicknames, you legit.
That means they're attached to you,
yeah.
right? They go to nickname you if you're leaving.
Like, Samari, what's up? He said, "Hey man, Sunshine is good. Man. He's a great athlete. He's hard to read on his routes. He's physical." I said, "He played quarterback." He's like, "Hey, man, you need to go read his bio. The dude's on the volleyball team, man. This dude can jump. He's an athlete." He said, "Man, you didn't see me catch, one-handed interceptions? Hey, man, I just saw him on the other field catch a one-handed pass with ease." And I'm like, he was up in the air. And I'm like, man, he little taller than me at 6'3". He said, "So if we even, I lose."
I'm leaving.
So I got to make sure I'm on top of my game. I go against that cat.
Let's get Mark Heim in. He's always on top of his game. He covers the SEC and more for AL.com and WNSP Radio. Mark, did you have a nickname in your sporting days like Drew Bennett was Sunshine?
Back in my elementary school days, I was known as Golden Hams.
Oh,
Golden Hands.
wow.
Oh,
that?
nice.
That sounds like a Disney movie.
Wow.
Yeah, as you would expect, that nickname did not follow me for very long as I grew older.
Well, but tell us the backdrop of why you got the name of Golden Hands. See, you tried to avoid that there, Mark.
No, well, you know what it is. I was kind of like Clifford Franklin from The Replacements. You remember the movie? Like the ball is a one-man cold with Clifford Franklin. Clifford Franklin only one catching it. Clifford Franklin only one coming down with it. And so back in the recess days, when they threw it up to Heim, they knew it was golden.
It was Heim time.
Okay.
There you go.
So those comments will stand out to us and our listeners. What comments from Greg Sankey stood out to you when he made his opening remarks?
Not a whole lot. I've said this now about SEC Media Days now for a few years. SEC spring meetings has really kind of stolen that thunder. We used to have to wait so long to talk to these guys. And now all of a sudden we almost get a double dose of them within a few months of each other. And even before the spring meetings, they do the Regions Pro-Am in Birmingham. So you get a lot of those coaches. So a lot of the issues that they're kind of discussing today, we've kind of already heard about. In fact, we've heard tons about. I thought Greg Sankey tried to be humorous at times and tried to break the monotony of it all. And I think he kind of reiterated what we've already know, which is he's going to stand up there and tell us we're in no rush with conference expansion, and we're in a position of power, and we don't have to make any rash decisions. So we'll just kind of continue to have these conversations, knowing that there's plenty going on around us. I think that was the gist of what he was trying to tell us. Interestingly enough, I thought the biggest thing we learned from Greg Sankey wasn't what he said at the podium. It was what he said to the SEC network prior. I'm not sure if y'all saw the comments, but he was kind of talking about how he really told his coaches that he wants them, and I'm going to screw this up, he wants them talking about the 3 Ps, and he was talking about his players, his program, and, I guess something else that started with P. I can't remember what it was, but he said specifically, and I quote, "Don't answer the questions they ask, answer the questions you want to answer." And I was like,
"Oh yeah."
So you know what I mean? I'm paraphrasing a little bit. So if you're not going to answer the questions that we're asking, like, what are we all doing here? You know what I mean? Like, I know you say that from a PR standpoint, tell those guys, but don't admit it to the general public.
Right. Like, don't let us look behind the curtain. Just let them not answer our questions organically. Don't tell us that they're not going to. Mark Heim, our guest, we're hitting you with the Heim. He is at Mark_Heim, AL.com and WNSP Radio.
Well, naturally, Mark, I want to know who you have favored to win, who's your surprise team, and then what do you think of UT in the East? As I just kind of blabbed out that I thought that they would win 10 games. It may give Alabama their toughest battle.
Well, I mean, I think when you start talking about, we talk a lot about over-unders and wins for the season based on those numbers that are out there. And, you say you go over for Alabama. I think it's somewhere like 11.5, and people start calling you an Alabama homer. But the way I look at it is you go down the schedule, in what games are they going to be favored, and in what games are they going to be underdogs? And we all know the answer. They're going to be favored in every game, right? So I don't know if there's anybody in the West, quite frankly, that can keep pace. It's a two-dog race. I think we're all aware of that. And so the question then becomes, who has the potential of tripping Alabama up, right, during the course of, where someone comes out and plays a really good game and maybe Alabama doesn't have its best game. In the past, I would say maybe the teams that like to fling it around a little bit, the Ole Misses of the world, maybe even the A&Ms, but, they got questions at quarterback this year. Interestingly enough, Nick Saban today basically said the biggest area of concern is at cornerback, right? They lost a bunch of them, a couple. They were injured at the end of last year. They were down starters Josh Jobe and Jalen Armour-Davis, and then they both wound up into the NFL draft this offseason. So late in the season, there was Kool-Aid McKinstry, which is one of the coolest names in college football.
Yes.
And then Kyrie Jackson. So they get a little experience from last year. They're still a little green. And now you get the LSU transfer, Eli Ricks. So it's a work in progress on the back end of that defense. The front end is going to be as good as it's ever been. The back end continues to be a concern. So you start looking at their schedule and you start wondering, well, who's got some of the better, more experienced passing attacks, and do they get them early enough before those guys get some meaningful snaps? I can tell you Utah State ain't it. And they get like Texas and Louisiana Monroe and Vanderbilt early. I guess I don't think Texas A&M does it, guys, after what they did last year, and everything that's riding on that game. I think Alabama's going to throw up 50 or 60 on them if they have the chance. So I hate to play to my audience here, but you look at a team like Tennessee who played really well this past year. Hooker is just getting better as time goes on. So I think he's the first legitimate test that they're going to see all year. I just don't think Ole Miss has the quarterback that we know of. There's just nobody on that schedule.
No doubt about it. I wish you could see our chat line there. Patrick Wilson said, when I said that, he said, Blaine, have you been tested for CTE yet? Because there's zero chance that Tennessee has a chance to beat Bama. And I didn't say they were going to beat Bama. I said they were going to be their toughest test.
Right. I mean, I guess there's a possibility that Mississippi State comes in and throws it all around because both Tennessee and Mississippi State have two of the better quarterbacks when we start talking about top 3, top 5 quarterbacks in the league. But who's going to do it? I mean, Auburn's going to do it? No. Ole Miss missing Corral. LSU is an unknown because of a new coach. So I think there are very limited opportunities in here for those that are looking for an upset against Alabama.
Well, Mark Heim, AL.com. I guess the question for me about Georgia is, how will they play being the hunted, and as well as, nobody's still respecting Stetson Bennett, man. I mean, the guy, as a college player, has done a lot, and I still don't think he's getting his just due credit.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys that it's a really good college football player, right? They don't even say good football player. He's just a really good college football player. It's almost like it's a slap in the face.
It is.
But to your point, I think Nick Saban talked about this leading up to SEC Media Days. It was really interesting. He said there's a different mentality coming off a national championship win and coming off a national championship loss, right? He says after a win, there's this human nature, it's entitlement to take a little time off and celebrate everything you've achieved. It's just basic human nature. Whereas when you're coming off the loss, you're so close, it refocuses you. You're recommitted. And so maybe even you got a little chip on your shoulder. So the point is, and it's the same thing you've always heard your whole life. It's so much easier to get motivated coming off a loss than it is a win, which makes what Alabama's done over the years, or any great dynasty has done over the years, that much more impressive. It's the fun part is the ride to the top. The hard part is staying there and staying at the top.
No doubt about it. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the realignment and where you think it's going to go potentially, whether it's a year or two from now or whenever. But there's the question that is really in the backdrop of it all is what my cohort been asking. Can eventually, with all the TV dollars and if conferences that continue to expand at some point, can they maneuver where they could no longer or kick the lower, let's say, schools out that they don't want in the conference?
Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever get to a point where they're kicking schools out of conferences. I think,
nice
and it's
way to say
purely speculation on my point, I think we wind up with at least two 20-team conferences, right? I think you're looking at the Big Ten and the SEC. I know Notre Dame's kind of the big one out there, but there was a recent report that they threw out a number of somebody was citing sources that Notre Dame needed $75 million a year in media rights payout just to remain viable as an independent. Now, that same report also indicates that NBC is going to need some help with that. Like, I think they want to be that person, but they're going to need what they call shoulder programming. So are they going to bring another network in to help with pre and post production of Notre Dame games, or do those away games maybe get on another network, another Power Five's network? I don't know the dynamics of all that, but if I'm another Power Five conference, why would I want to help you support Notre Dame? If Notre Dame needs help, come to my conference. I think ultimately at some point Notre Dame's going to wind up in the Big Ten. I think SEC will make its move for some of those ACC schools, and I think we're probably at a 20-team max. And as I think Kirk Herbstreit mentioned a couple of days ago, I think he thinks maybe at some point maybe some of the best of the rest might get together for maybe a third 20-team conference, and then at that point you're kind of set.
We're MarkHeim.com.
What does Brian Harsin have to do to turn the fire off on his seat for this year? He is, and that's my guy now. I know Hars, so be kind. But what's he got to do to just say, hey, I need to turn this burner down, my butt's on fire?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure there's anything he can do. I mean, even after these guys at Auburn, you look at Gus, you look at Gene Chizik, even after you win a national championship, the fire is still burning.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, the higher-ups, the money power brokers, the boosters, whatever you want to call them at Auburn, just refuse to somehow allow anybody that they don't make as their primary choice feel good about themselves. They are out to get Brian Harsin. It's not Brian Harsin personally. It's any time someone gets in there they disagree with or don't like the way in which they do things, they just completely blackball him, and they're always looking for a way to get him out. And it doesn't matter whether he wins or not. It's simply, this is going to be the way we run it. And this is always what's kind of hurt Auburn. It's always what's kept them back. And they just haven't been able to clean house with those power brokers or their boosters. And it's been an ongoing thing. And the biggest comedy of it all, quite frankly, is that they always air it in this public domain. Like, I'm sure all of this happens at every major college football institution across the country, but you rarely hear about it, right? Yeah. With Auburn, it's always in the news. And it was crazy that they were doing this after just 1 year this past spring. He has said all the right things. He's been on my radio show down here in Mobile, talked about how it was kind of maybe you had to take one step back to take two steps forward. He ensures us that everybody that's on the roster in that program now believes in what they're doing and they can move forward. So, I mean, we'll see. He's saying all the right things, but there's certainly a gap in talent there between them and some of the elite programs in the conference. And so, yeah, we're going to see. But I just don't. If he wins 7 or 8 games, it's a huge win for Auburn. But I don't think those power brokers are going to see it that way.
Gosh, how close are programs 2 through 6 in the SEC East?
Ooh, 2 through. I would say.
So basically, everybody but Vanderbilt and Georgia. How close is everybody else?
I think they have potential. I mean, I think we've proven that you can win at Tennessee over a long period of time. You can win at Florida over a long period of time. I'm not so sure long term you can sustain that success at places like South Carolina. Not that they're not good programs. I love Shane Beamer. That hype video he dropped today was,
That
was fantastic. that was great. That's part of what I love about SEC Media Days and being in the SEC. I mean, it's good stuff. I mean, Kentucky has shown it's gotten better, but can they be championship caliber year in and year out in this conference? And the answer based on the history of those programs is no. I mean, it's kind of like Ole Miss and Mississippi State. There are years where they have great years, but they're not going to compete year in and year out for titles. So, there's always going to be that gap. It's funny, and I don't mean to shift gears on y'all, but one of the problems I have with Nick Saban is that the topic of NIL comes up, and he likes to start talking about a competitive balance and how NIL kind of throws that out of whack. Dude, what are you talking about? Like, I get what he's saying, that there's a certain number of scholarships and recruiting rules are in place so everything's equal, but there's never been a competitive balance in college football. And he only starts talking about competitive balance when there are things happening in college football like NIL that threaten his livelihood, whether it's competitive balance, hurry up or tempo, RPOs and linemen downfield, right? So, don't tell me, don't talk competitive balance to me about college football. It's never been balanced and never will be.
Get that fair and balanced stuff from Mark Heim, though, who covers the SEC and more for AL.com and WNSP Radio.
Well, I was definitely going to ask you that. I had a competitive balance. I was wondering what he was referring to. I'm like, well, you were always the standard. So why now you're being threatened? Is that what you're saying?
No, but his idea of competitive balance is, man, we all have the same number of scholarships. Yeah, but we're all not recruiting from the same pool here. Like, what are we talking about? And your facilities are a lot different than, my facilities. Like, yeah, I see what you're saying, but come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah.
Well, what do you think? Where do you think the NIL is going to go in that whole fiasco with the rules?
You guys know this. I'm sure you all have talked a lot about NIL. This is exactly, for those of us that were against NIL from the beginning, and I was one of them, it turned into exactly what we thought it was going to turn into, which was a recruiting tool and inducements. And it's not based on your name, image, and likeness. It's a branding tool. So if I'm a lineman at Tennessee, I'm going to get more money hypothetically than I would if I were at Southern Miss or name your school. And that's not the purpose of it. So when you see these collectives giving these broad-based $50,000 to every offensive lineman, that is against what NIL is about. Now, you guys know there's no oversight. There's no rules enforcement committee that says you're doing it wrong, you're cheating, which is where Nick Saban got himself into a lot of hot water with Jimbo. But at the end of the day, I don't know if we can put the genie back in the bottle. Like, how do you, especially with such a litigious society that we live in, if the NCAA does something that's counter to what you believe, you just sue and they have to give in. So I think we took a huge misstep, and I'm not sure we can close Pandora's box.
Can you tell us a little bit about, give us some insight on Bryce Young as a person, and then what do you think is his chances of winning the Heisman back-to-back? I think it would be the first quarterback in Alabama history to win back-to-back, right?
Oh, yeah. So he was the first quarterback to win a Heisman in Alabama. So I think we've seen the history. We've seen guys come back for another year after winning the Heisman. It's just so hard to convince, voters to vote for you a second time. There have been a number of guys that have played as well or just as well. I mean, I don't have their numbers in front of me, but guys that come to mind, Johnny Manziel, Tim Tebow, those guys came back. I think did Sam Bradford at Oklahoma? I can't remember. Those guys came back for second years, and I think Matt Leinart came back, and I think Reggie Bush won it that year and that whole thing. But it's just so hard to convince voters to vote for you a second year. Fatigue is a real thing. We call it Alabama fatigue or SEC fatigue. He would have to go undefeated and to that point of the voting, which isn't necessarily hard to do. Then you'd have to see what kind of other dark horses are out there, maybe surprising some folks. It's really about who's grabbing the headlines in the way in which the media portrays it. But, he's everything you want. He's, a poster boy for college football. He says all the right things, handles himself the right way. In fact, Nick Saban talked about him and Will Anderson. He can't remember if he's ever had an offensive and defensive leaders as impressive as those guys at the same time on the same team. And I think that speaks volumes of both those individuals. I think if you go back to last year, you could see, and this goes back to having that mentality going into the upcoming year chasing a title, there were a lot of issues on that team that we didn't really know a whole lot about. We saw it come up, and Saban hinted at those things. We're guys on defense were kind of freelancing a little bit, not being in the right place, blowing coverages because they're not getting the signals. I mean, there was a lot of that going on, and I think when you have leaders like Bryce and Will, I think that kind of stuff gets nipped in the bud. I think this is a really focused group, and they're going to be hungry.
Will Will Anderson really get a legitimate shot at winning the Heisman? That's junior, that is.
I don't think so, and that's not me saying I don't think he deserves it, because I think most people would argue he's one of the, if not the best college football player in the country, and even he acknowledged that today. He basically said his job isn't to go out there and try to win the Heisman, but what he hopes to do is maybe open people's eyes to the idea of a defensive player winning the Heisman in years to come. So maybe he can kind of be the one of the bricks in the foundation of making that argument. I mean, if you remember back to Charles Woodson when he beat out Peyton Manning, which was ridiculous, but when he beat out Peyton Manning, I mean, everybody there was a proactive movement to have a defensive player win the Heisman. But if you guys remember, if he had just played defense, that may not have been enough. I mean, he excelled in special teams too. So even then, when a defensive player won it, he excelled in a third phase of the game, which I think helped propel him to that stature.
Mark, fantastic stuff, man. It's always great catching up with you. I was checking out your Twitter at Mark_Heim, again, AL.com. Always great content and also really good stuff on the radio as well, WNSP. Thank you, sir, for the time.
Hey, you guys
Thanks,
too.
Mark.
Enjoyed it, gentlemen, and I use that term loosely.
We'll catch up again soon, Golden Hands.
All right, man, enjoyed it. Oh, I'm not going to live that one down. Y'all have a good one.
No doubt.
All right, Mark Heim. All right, we come up. What does the ESPN FPI say about who can win the East? Well, we know who's going to win, but how much do they think by? We'll tell you that. And also, where does Tennessee stand in the pecking order of who can win the East? Again, according to the ESPN FPI. We'll share that with you next. Blaine and Mickey 104.5 The Zone. So it's just wall to wall ESPN on.
Yeah.
Everything.
And also, we were talking about the home run derby there, and my man Pujols, my prediction, he almost came through for me. I know Lucas was tuned into it all day, but Soto got him. And we were talking about Soto turned down $440 million, and he's gonna be traded within the next 2 weeks because he has the big man Boris as his agent, so he will get that money from somebody.
They may have miscounted, though, for your man Schwarber. I think Pujols may have gotten a little bit of an assist last night.
Because they didn't count one?
Yeah. And what's funny is I had to go do something with my son. We watched Pujols bat, and I was like, well, he didn't hit too many, son. Let's go. And so we got baseball gloves to break in. You know, we got stuff to do. So we came back in later. I was like, what in the world happened?
Yeah, they might have miscalculated, but he made it. So he almost got it done.
He did make it.
I was thoroughly impressed, though. So
I'll say
much respect to him and all the other players there that were, maybe, I guess a speech and surrounded him and everything. That was really cool.
I'll tell you, you guys know this. I'm sick. I usually watch every Cardinals game on TV. I buy the baseball package from Comcast.
That's why I picked him for you.
I know. I appreciate
you
that.
didn't even pick him.
Heck, no, I didn't pick him. I watch the games every
You're
night,
like
Blaine.
Lucas. You just want to win. I just, sometimes you got to lean into,
I picked Pete Alonso.
Or just a player that you like, you're passionate about. It's okay if you lose.
Well, I watch him play every third night when he plays. So now he's gotten better. He's up to I don't know, he's probably hitting 215, 218, something now. He was down below 200 for a minute.
Oh, he's at 215?
Yeah. If he's at 215.
Oh.
He's right around 215, 220.
Oh, man. I thought he was around like 250.
No, he's no more than 220. Now, I'll say this. By the end of the year, let's say if he hits 240 this year and hits 12 home runs or something, that'd be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's more than they're getting from a lot of their guys. All right.
He has no shot of getting to fifth all time? No. Is that right?
For home runs, he's 685. I think Alex Rodriguez is Lucas, you may need to check. He's got 696, I think.
I think he's 15 or so ahead.
Yeah, I don't think he could ever. Boy, if he did, that would mean just the craziest rest of the season in the world in Cardinals history if he got hot and hit 16 more home runs. It's just, I don't think it's going to happen. But every other night, he'll do something that'll be like, Albert Pujols sets the record for time stepped over the baseline, and they'll stop and celebrate the game. Albert Pujols has peed in the middle of the game.
Stop that.
16,000 times now.
Okay, that's enough with the voice.
Cardinals urinals. I mean, they stop the game every other night because he's set some kind of record.
Oh, okay, but not for those kind of
No,
records.
not that.
Okay.
Like extra base hits, though. He missed a home run by an inch the other night. And he's third all time in extra base hits.
It's even more impressive when you consider how much older he actually is.
Yeah, because we don't really know his age because they say he's, 42? You never know if he's more like 52. I mean,
he may be.
Or 48.
He may be 52.
He's at least
he may
45.
be 48.
He's at least 45.
100%.
Yeah.
When they said he was 25, I'm like, that guy looks like a full-grown man. Or when he first came up, I'm like, they're got to be lying about this guy's age.
Yeah, he was ripped up then, too.
He is. I was there the night he got his 2,000th hit years and years ago. I just happened to be at that game. It was the one game I picked to go to.
You
it was
went
sheer
for that game
dumb
just
luck.
because you knew he was going to get it.
Sheer dumb luck.
The story got to you tell the story later that or you planned it because you knew he was going to hit it.
I picked that game.
Exactly.
All right, Lucas Panzica. ESPN FPI, what is that? The Football Power Index?
FBI?
Well, this is not that.
FPI.
It predicts things, and it's a mystery, and nobody knows how. So let's say Georgia is the favorite. How much do you think, and this is not people, this is computers. How much do you think the computers favor Georgia to win the East? What percentage out of 100?
Oh, I would give it 84%.
He's playing his own Jeopardy music. We're going to have to pay royalties on this.
I'm going to go 79.8%.
90. 90%. 90. I thought you were sure go. I'm going to go 85 so I can beat Lucas. But
look, there he beat me again.
You know who's second?
Tennessee.
Is it?
Nope.
Is it South Carolina?
Nope.
Kentucky.
Kentucky.
Oh.
But 6%. So this leaves 10% for everybody else. You know who third is? And this is going to pee some people off.
South Carolina.
Nope.
Florida?
Florida.
Wow.
And Tennessee fans are like, hey, man,
If they can't get Florida this year, they ain't getting it no year, man. All right, now, I'm sorry, man. They got to get it. I know they have talent, but new coaching staff, they get them early in the season. They got to be able to get these dudes.
They've never been able to take advantage of Florida being down, right?
Yep.
Like Will Muschamp went 4-8 and lost to Georgia Southern, but Tennessee's off to the side having its own issues, right?
Yeah.
The Jim McElwain era crashes and burns. They've never been able to take advantage of Florida being down because they've had their own problems. This is that opportunity.
I had a friend who called Jim McElwain butter teeth.
Oh, God.
Tennessee is next, 1%. South Carolina is next, 0.6%. So you're saying there's a chance. Mizzou, 0.1. And Vanderbilt, they had to invent a graphic that means less than 0.1%.
Oh, that's right. Clark Lee went on today. He went on today. He spoke today.
He sure did.
And then that's why we have to run.
My wife said, every day I'm going to try to get a quote from my wife. Yesterday it was boy, the SEC just thinks they have their cake and eat it too, I guess. Because I was explaining all the stuff, and I was like, they are the cake. Yeah. So today her quote was, man, this guy's just only up there talking about Vanderbilt. I said, he's the coach. That's what he's supposed to do.
Well, but in her defense,
I felt like when he finished, though, they're going to have great young men come out of the defending men. That I got. And that's where it's skewed right there. That's what the issue is. SEC don't care about nothing about good men. They care about you playing that football game.
What's their yearly payout?
In her defense, as Lane Kiffin said, most of the time coaches just get up there and start talking about Alabama.
So he didn't fall in that trap. All right, when we come back, Pete Thamel, who's in charge of college football and what does the next 5 years hold? He gave some fantastic answers. If you're a college football fan and you're wondering what's next, you want to stick around and hear what Pete Thamel said this morning. We got it next.
It is 2:03. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. We have a starting quarterback on West End. Vanderbilt head coach Clark Lee spoke at the podium down in Atlanta during SEC Media Days this morning and stated that Mike Wright is the starter at QB heading into fall camp. Coming up today, well, they're done for the day as Shane Beamer from South Carolina has wrapped up, and they'll pick back up tomorrow in Atlanta. 3HL broadcasting live from SEC Media Days through Thursday, presented by Brentwood Hearing. Major League Baseball, the All-Star break continues. The All-Star game is tonight in Los Angeles, a 7 p.m. first pitch. And Nashville Soccer Club made it official this morning. The club announced the signing of right back Shaq Moore from Spanish Second Division club Tenerife. The 25-year-old has 15 appearances with the U.S. men's national team. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once and your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
All right, Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday to you. Yeah, man, it's Tuesday all day. SEC Media Days continue. So today, Nick Saban and Clark Lee and Mike Leach and Shane Beamer were the guys today. It's funny. Everybody's basically answering this. What about NIL? How's that affecting your program? There's one lady from the Wall Street Journal who has asked every coach who's been on the stage so far a question about same question. And she tried to get Nick Saban a little bit today. She's like, I know it's not something you like or whatever. And he's like, all right, I never said it.
Hypotheticals.
Yeah. She's like, all right, I never said I didn't like it. Then he shot down everything she said. Then he answered. And Lane Kiffin yesterday mentioned, well, the NFL has a salary cap, which is what you've been saying. You got into this yesterday. Like, maybe they just need a salary cap. Like, cap this position makes this much. This
right. Quarterback is $1 million.
Right. Make
offensive lineman is, give it time.
Make it so there's.
He must have listened to the show.
Lane Kiffin said salary cap. So today, Nick Saban mentioned how the NFL has a players association that fights for the rights of players.
Oh, sure did.
And he's
he did.
And he's like, these guys are signing deals and nobody's telling them what's good or what's bad. He goes, we're trying to do it. And was it Kiffin? Or no, Sankey yesterday said it. Guys might be signing something that had them entangled in things for years.
Mm-hmm.
And so
to me, that leads you down the road that the agent is going to have another role, or he's going to have somebody that he feeds that to.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden now the agents become even more powerful sooner.
And especially in the lives of these kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I carried your butt through college, remember? So it's going to be 4% now, and it's a lifetime contract. So you go ahead. You actually already signed it. So, yeah. The other thing Nick Saban said, and I appreciate that he would say this. This was the day after his commissioner said, I don't care if it's 4 teams or 8 teams or 12 teams. I don't want any automatic bids. Sankey said that. Well, Nick Saban, at least twice today, got into this super conferences would create haves and have-nots. NIL has created haves and have-nots. He basically said that. And both times he was like, well, we're a have. We have everything at Alabama. But the other teams, that's what I'm talking about. Well, there's always been haves and have-nots. Mm-hmm. And I've told the story multiple times of we were trying to build a scoreboard at Arkansas State, and I was talking to the guy who builds the scoreboards at Daktronics. This is several years ago. And I said, where were you today? He goes, I'm helping Auburn put the finishing touches on theirs. I said, how much is their scoreboard? He goes, let me ask you a question. What's your budget? I said, this year it's about $13 million. This is all in for everything. He goes, that's what their scoreboard was. They spent our entire budget on one scoreboard for football. So if you wonder about haves and have-nots, that's where we are. So Nick Saban saying that a couple of times. And Pete Thamel did an interview. He's been really making the rounds, and he says that the talks between the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are dead about a merger. He's really been immersed in a bunch of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And so he was talking to the SEC Today crew, to Tebow and Feinbaum and Laura Rutledge. And I ran over and I taped this and I sent it to Lucas because some of you might – I think when we came on after Lucas and Will Bowling, what was it, however many, 10, 11, 12 days, whatever, when USC and UCLA, when that news leaked that they were going to leave. I think you and Will and then Blaine and me, we came on and we're like, gosh, what's next? two 20-member conferences, and then nothing else happened, right? But I think we're all kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Or does at some point do all these conferences – I had somebody ask me, at some point you think everybody will kind of get together and like try to come up with a commissioner, which you said Nick Saban. Let him coach a couple more years and he could be the – I said a couple more weeks yesterday in the Zone TV chat. Was like, please, God, let him only coach 2 more weeks. But I said,
a handful of years.
You said let him coach a handful of years and then be done. Then he could be the commissioner. And I thought of like Tony Dungy, somebody like that who knows football, who's trustworthy. Well, Pete Thamel got asked on set today. There's 2 parts to this. He got asked, they were talking about what would it take to get everybody together? What's the future of college football? Do you think people are looking at this like, how could we get together down the road? This is part 1. Pete Thamel, who works for ESPN.
We're in this myopic period of college sports where we just answer the problems that are directly in front of our eyes, and nobody sits back and says, what do we want the sport to look like in 5 years, and how do we get there? And I really think that's when you don't have one leader galvanizing everybody. Nobody's looking out for the common good of college football. Everyone's clinging to their slice of the cookie. This is an old criticism, Paul. This isn't the first time that I've said that. But I don't think it has ever been so apparent as where we are right now. The whole world is fractured. Everybody's protecting their turf, and that's manifested itself in NIL. It's a great question, Tim, because everybody is tied so much financially to their league's future. And even if you look at the Supreme Court Alston ruling, it says basically that conferences can lead the way without antitrust violations, and it's going to be hard for the NCAA to do that. A breakaway is complicated. Everything's complicated. I don't see a linear path to college football having a smoother leadership in the future.
So you think it's going to stay as such for a little while?
Yep. It's a beautiful game, and it's a bad business.
So that was both ends of it. When there's a little hiccup in there, and he says, well, Tim, that was the second question. And the second question, Tebow basically asked him, is there somebody that could get everybody together? Is there somebody that could do it? And he essentially said no. And people keep looking for this breakaway, like, they're just going to say screw it. Even he said, I don't even think that's feasible right now. So to me, that was interesting because I think we all expected all this crazy shifting to happen, and that hasn't happened yet. Or maybe somehow, some way, there could be some kind of common sense of somebody to say, we've got to get all on the same page. And he's saying, that's not going to happen either. They're just going to keep eating and consuming each other just like they're doing every day now.
Well, eventually it goes down the road. It'll be better once everything is figured out, which we don't know when that will be. When he was talking about smaller schools actually helping them make their decisions, and they're on the boards and making all those decisions. That's one of the things. I think the biggest shoe to drop that's going to change everything, and it hasn't happened, and that's why I keep harping on immediately when we were talking about Will Bowling and the next we came on, is our first thing came to mind is Notre Dame, because if that shoe drops, whatever happens, whether they do their own deal or they branch with another conference, then that's going to make things change. And what made me think about that was what Lucas told us about what's in the contract with Notre Dame. What's it called, Lucas?
You're talking about the grant of rights with the ACC?
Rights. What you said, they have to stay in the ACC. Well, what they will do then, they will get other schools to leave the ACC and they come with them wherever they go. And then now that opens the window for them to leave, right?
Well, they would need over half the league to agree to leave to dissolve the grant of rights. So that would be 8 teams.
Well, they'll be able to convince them if they're going to get a new TV deal and they already take them somewhere else, or they have them negotiate with another conference. But I think that's the shoe to drop to really change everything.
Well,
it's Notre Dame. It's Notre Dame and what they decide to do, whether that's their own TV deal, which they're trying to get $75 million with NBC. I think they talked about.
Yeah, the Dennis Dodd report. That was it. Yep.
Which I don't know if they're going to be able to do that.
If they do that, they're staying. They're
right. They're going to stay put.
Sticking independent. Yeah.
But NBC is already like, I don't know where we're going to get that kind of money. We can get half of that.
You know what they make right now from NBC annually?
What is it?
15.
15. Yeah, it's 15. Yeah, it wasn't a very high number. So they feel like they get 75. They're cool. Because even if the Big Ten or the SEC is getting $100 to $200 million per school, they feel like, hey, we're right there in the hunt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's half of that. We're good. because they don't want to give up. For whatever reason, they will not. They're going to fight to the end until they have to. They may get a $400 million contract when they eventually drop into another conference at that point in time. So I think they're the linchpin to the next move, whatever they do. And that could be, 3 years from now. We have no idea. It could be, tomorrow.
If they can get their money where they want it, like you said, from NBC, at that point they'd be like, why in the world will we be bound by a contract? You think we're crazy? We ain't doing that. But if NBC's like you said, like, hey, man, this is all the money we got. We shook out every couch cushion. This is the best we could do. They might have to be like, okay, Big Ten, what's that payout going to look like? Let's hear your best pitch.
Well, what I also think is the slow play is getting the government involved, which they haven't been. And to me, that would then kind of speed up where they think they need to go. Because if we keep going down this road, the NIL, it's going to get way out of control. Just imagine what it's going to be 5 years from now if everything stays the same. I mean, man, that's going to be, it's going to be way out of hand for the players in the universities, the ones that have the big dough, and SEC, Big Ten, to kind of tame this thing and where it could go for players. And not good for the players to on the other side of it, not the money side, but the other side of it, because then they're going to start making decisions based off the money. That's what they're about to get, real life, real stuff, real quick.
Lane Kiffin basically
Straight out of high school.
Lane Kiffin basically said, so if a booster's paying a guy all this money, is the booster going to call me and go, hey, that guy's got to play, Lane? Or does it get to the point where I don't recruit a guy, but the booster's like, hey, Lane, we just got you this 5-star. That's your guy. I mean, he went everything you have said, he said from the stage yesterday, like he'd been listening to the show.
Yeah. And, oh, by the way, every time I watch Lane up there at Ole Miss, I feel like he's going to leave at any minute. And I don't know why I feel that way, because he's there this season already. It's just I feel like that just doesn't seem like that's where his final destination, like that's where he's going to be for a while. I don't know why. I have no inclination of anything, of any rumors or anything. I just feel like I don't think he can get to where he wants to go at Ole Miss.
He wants to win a national championship.
Yeah, and I think that's why I say that.
It's not going to happen there.
And it has to be either in an SEC or a Big Ten school, and I can't see him go into the Midwest. So then he has to be at an SEC school.
Auburn?
Oh.
Sorry, Brian Harsin.
Oh, now that would be interesting. They would be clamoring, especially for him to go against Nicky Boy.
Okay.
Yeah,
My wild card.
I like that one. That's a good one.
I know we got to go, but my wild card for him was always, what if Florida State just threw all the money in the world at him and told him they'd do whatever he wanted? Because that's a path to win.
Oh, yeah,
And
they're saying that job, man.
And that'd be a better fit than Auburn to me. I don't think he's not a quote unquote Auburn man.
Nope. I can't see Lane living on the plains. That sounds insane. But I could see him living down in Tallahassee. I could see him in that garnet and gold and visor and living the dream down there. And I could see Florida State getting desperate enough, if they continue to be completely irrelevant, to be like, okay, what's it going to take? All right, Lucas just gave us some hand signals. It means it's time to go, because Coach Mack is coming up next. We'll switch to Titans Talk with the Mack Attack next.
He gave us a Nick Saban.
Yeah. Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. You know what this music means. It means the arrival of Dave McGinnis, Coach Mack, who joins us each week around this same time for the Mac Attack. Coach, got vets and we got rookies who are about to report in 1 week. Rookies in less than a week, vets in a week. You ready for that, Coach?
Oh, absolutely I am. I'm completely ready for it. I think last week when we talked, starting about getting ready, I was down at Larry Stone's place, in Cookville at his radio complex, which if you've never been to, you need to take a trip. It's outstanding. Talking about the Coach to Coach show that we were going to put together, and that is the beginning to me that I know it's going to get real. I know you guys, I'm sure, have been covering what's going on with the SEC media days. A lot going on, guys, right now before the balls are even snapped. Both collegiately and in the NFL, but especially collegiately. So it's going to be an interesting year.
You couldn't even get Larry Stone to take you to that Buc-ee's, huh? I think you sold him on it. We were all around each other the other night, and I think you finally sold him on the trip to Buc-ee's.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't real. He just could not understand the phenomenon of Buc-ee's, and I said, well, you got to have grown up in Texas to understand it. And he said, well, the first time I think it's in Crossville, right?
Yes, sir.
The first time I drove by it, it looked like, that they were having a party. You couldn't even get in the parking lot. So I said, well, that's the way they normally are.
We were talking about, I know you were there for about half of his time with the Titans, but Blaine got down a rabbit hole earlier. We are talking about Drew Bennett. And Blaine was here, of course, when he was a rookie free agent, former quarterback. He was Cade McNown's backup at UCLA. Then he spent a year and played receiver, and then he came here and made it in the league. And I thought, well, Coach Mack you were here as part of the time with Drew Bennett. What do you remember about him?
Drew Bennett was one of those sneaky athletic dudes that when, you just looked at him kind of long and lanky and lean. But when you go into his background, and I remember him coming out. This guy was an athlete. Look, I've lived on the West Coast, and I'm telling you, some of the better athletes out there, they play beach volleyball. I mean, and he was one of those dudes. And so, when you kind of looked at him, you kind of wondered what's going on. But I mean, he was sneaky good as far as being able to get away. He had a great catch radius. This guy, and he was an athlete. I mean, and he would get past a defensive back that would underestimate him. And I've seen him do it plenty of times. Drew Bennett was a really, really good athlete that I don't think ever got quite the credit for being the athlete that he was. But he turned it into a pretty good payday with the Rams.
Sure did. Also hit 430 as a baseball player as a senior in high school.
I didn't know.
Yeah, he did.
This dude was just an athlete, man. Every time he did any sport one time, you be like, man, how long you been doing it? Oh, that's my first time playing. Coach, I despise those kind of people. Oh, how are you so good at everything? Good Lord.
When I showed up, and I started watching, him, and I asked Fish, I said, what about this guy? He said, Mac, just watch him. I mean, athlete. I mean, that's all you can say. And that you said he hit 430, and basically that doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that he was a great volleyball player. It doesn't surprise me, as Blaine is talking about, that whatever he picked up he could do. I mean, he's just one of those natural hand-eye coordination guys that wasn't overly twitchy, but, I mean, he could jump as high as he needed to jump, and he could get away from you. And, again, as I say, for a catch radius, I mean, it was excellent. As I said, he had a nice career here and then, turned it into a pretty big payday when he went to the Rams.
Well, Coach, since we're talking about former players, Jason McCourty just retired.
Yeah.
Give us a kind of a glimpse of your memories of Jason McCourty, not only as a player, but as a person, too.
Love J Mac. J Mac. One of the better people, that I've ever had the privilege of being around as a coach, in the professional ranks. Just what a really, really solid. He and his brother both. But J Mac was such a solid individual and a very, very good football player. I mean, he double-digit career. How long J Mac plays? He's
13 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, 13. I mean, think how hard that is. We all know, but it's just you have to be special to be able to do that, and not only physically special, but mentally special to be able to do that. And so I've got nothing but high regard and praise and admiration. for J-Mac. I saw him, I think, a couple of years ago. He was back here in town. We were at an event where it was a grand opening when they were I think when Tom Morales had that grand opening at Woolworths when he had bought it and turned it into a restaurant. And I saw J-Mac there. I mean, wonderful human being. 13 years. That's something to be congratulated on.
Yeah, 6th-round pick, man. But he started immediately and played for a long, long time. Yeah, Jason McCourty, what a heck of a player. I guess, Coach, over the last 10 years, we've seen that the talent level has increased in the National Football League for sure. But the gap between what makes a good player and a great player is still the same. Kind of take us through the differences between that you see in players that are great players and good players, because there are some players who maybe athletically were just really good players, but somehow, some way, they became great players.
Yeah, that's it. I love that point that you make, and just kind of going back to what I said about J-Mac. Look, anybody that gets into a camp in the National Football League has top 1% athletic ability. When you start just going across the country, you can't get noticed, and you don't come into a camp without some type of athleticism. So that has to be a given. And then the separation of all of that is, now some are more gifted than others athletically, but still the greater point of separation comes into the mind, the heart, and the attitude and the mentality of to be able to do the grind that it takes to be this in the National Football League, day in, day out, week in, week out, season in, season out, off season, in season. I mean, it's a total life commitment that you have to make if you're going to maximize the talents that you have physically and then bring all those other intrinsic values together. But the mind and the mentality and also just the heart for it is what I mean. I've been fortunate enough to be on teams and coached I think 7 or 8 Hall of Famers, and I've been around a lot of great players. But the separation even of those elite players comes down to those attributes that I just talked about. And it's not something that you just automatically can say, this guy has it, this guy doesn't. But once you're around them, you find out very, very quickly about what separates them from the others. Because, even when I was on teams that had those types of players, and the younger players would ask me, what makes them so good? I said, it's not just what they can do physically. It's what they do around their physical gifts. And somehow you need to be able to tap into that knowledge from them and then apply it to yourself, because nobody can really give that to you. Nobody can give that part to you. People can train you. People can get you stronger. People can train you with your techniques, and people can train you physically as to what you have to do. But the rest of that stuff, that has to come from you. And you have to be able to tap into that yourself. And that's what separates them. I mean, it separates them very quick. In all my 31 years of coaching, and even now, I see a lot of guys that come in with a physical ability to play, but some of those other pieces are missing, and they don't last long because it's just too competitive.
Well, with Coach Mack giving us the Mack attack, and now to the Titans, and I would say maybe think differently, but they maybe are the favorite in the AFC South. I know a lot of people say otherwise. But what I'm getting to, as a coach, a former head coach, does it change the mindset of how you approach training camp going into knowing if you have a veteran team or a mix of both or a younger team? How does that play out when you're preparing as a head coach going into training camp?
I think absolutely. I mean, you construct and you work your team depending on the type of team that you have, or you think you're going to have, or that you have, and you understand what the difference is year to year to year. Now, it's different now, Blaine, than when I first started coaching, because there was no free agency and no salary cap, because we had the same guys coming back year after year after year. So you really knew what you had, what you could build on. Now, when you flip 30 to 33% of your roster every year, because of attrition, because of salary cap, because of the draft, those types, that makes a difference now, because if you've got a solid base and a solid foundation, which the Titans are a team that does, we can point to teams in the league that don't, because everybody is going to amass talented players, but they have to have a foundation and a philosophy that they are coming into. So the first thing you have to do is develop that philosophy, and then surround that philosophy with the players that can carry it out, and then can pass it on to the new players. I don't necessarily say younger players, because some players are new to coming into what you're doing, but you absolutely do as a coach, because every team that you have, especially in this day and age of the National Football League, is going to be different. It's a different makeup. You have the same philosophy. That's why it's so important to be able to reset, after the previous year, because whether you've had success, whether you had non-success, whether you've had disappointments, whether whatever you've done, you're going to have to reset. And so being able to have a foundation to reset on, it makes it a lot easier, but you have to be able to recognize pretty quick. That's what the OTAs are for. That's what the off season is for. But it's very important now when you come to a training camp to start putting those pieces together. And every year, some of the positions and some of the groups you're going to have to develop may take a little bit more intense development than other groups, just because of their makeup. So the answer to your question is absolutely yes. That's part of being a very cognizant coach as to what you have in your locker room.
Coach Mack giving us the Mack attack. And me and Mickey, I want to ask one fun question. Yesterday we were talking about favorite drills, and I said bull in the ring. Mickey, you said, what was the drill you
They
liked?
called it Blood Alley at our school, but it was the Oklahoma drill.
Oklahoma drill, right. I'm sure you've heard of all those. But or when you were coaching, what drill did you like doing? Maybe it was with the linebackers or D-line. I don't know. But kind of tell us some of the drills you used to like to do, or your favorite one.
Well, first of all, the Oklahoma drill and the bull in the ring stuff, we did that in West Texas.
Right, we were doing that in Indiana.
Northeast Arkansas too.
Yeah, we were doing.
Yeah, well, I never did much of that in the National Football League.
Yeah.
No, I never did that. But when I was developing linebackers, one of the drills that that I always did, all the years that I coached linebackers, is the one that Mike Singletary absolutely loved, was the shock and shed drill. I would get that single donkey sled and work on shocking and shedding and extending and releasing and hands, because that's one thing that especially second level players coming into the National Football League, from the collegiate game, they don't learn how to use their hands on defense as much. And some people will think, well, that's just for the defensive front. No, it's for every position. It may be a little different how you learn to use your hands and shock and shed. But I always did that. Keith Bullock still to this day goes, Mac, sometimes I still see that sled in my sleep.
He was doing so much shocking and shedding. You know what I got out of that? Shocking and shedding a donkey. So that's why I wouldn't have been very good at that. We're on with Coach Mack, giving us the Mack attack.
That's right. Look to the folks at Farm Bureau Health Plans when you need someone who knows the health care coverage game plan. They've been protecting Tennesseans for 75 years, and Coach Mack has been giving us the Mack attack each and every week. So one of the interesting things, I love football history, and you were talking about training camp a couple of weeks ago, and you said, guys, we used to go a lot earlier. We were there much longer in training camp. There was a lot more to it, and there were two-a-days and everything else. So guys used to go to training camp to get in shape. That was part of the National Football League. So guys better be in shape now. But let me ask you, when guys report Mike Vrabel and the team hits the field, if you were out there, what is the first thing that you're looking for? Is it how much guys have retained and what they've picked up and just how ready to go they are? What's the first thing you're looking at?
Well, a lot of things have changed. Now, you've got 3 days of orientation. We come in. I mean, you talk about Oklahoma drill or the sled drill. I mean, when I first got into the league with the Bears, first day at training camp, full pads in Platteville, Wisconsin, it was on the sled. Dan Hampton against Jimbo Cobra, and you mark it, set, go. Mike Singletary against Walter Payton, and you mark it, set, go. That doesn't happen anymore. That's not what you do. You got 3 days of orientation, of moving into it. No pads on. But for me, the thing that I always want to look at, of course, everybody's got a conditioning test when you come in,
right?
And really, what that conditioning test is about, it's not really, it's to see, how diligent you've been just about a program that has been given to you, or if you're not the prescribed program, but that you have done that test during the summer whether you're on the track running, whether you're on the field running, whatever that test entails, your timed abilities, and I've had various ones of them during my coaching career, but just to see, the work they've put in. But then the biggest thing to me, again, you've got to have your body ready. If you don't have your body ready, well, then, pretty soon, oxygen deprivation and fatigue makes cowards of everybody. And so you've got to be in shape to be able to do things. But I wanted to find out just where they were mentally, and especially the newer guys that were going to be involved in what we were doing. I knew where the vets would be, but I had to find out, because where they are mentally when they come back tells me what they've been working on, that they've been taught, because you've got to start and you've got to go. You don't have a lot of time to wait for somebody, because now training camp is so much shorter than it used to be, and you're playing preseason games so much earlier, and now you only have 3 preseason games. And so all of this stuff has to be accelerated. So to me, the mental retention and the mental focus is what I wanted to look at very, very quickly when they got back on campus.
Coach Mack giving us a Mac attack here on Blaine and Mickey. Coach, fantastic stuff. So the next time we talk to you, they'll be like Titans here doing Titan stuff. Cannot wait.
It's training camp, guys. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys out there, and we can start talking some ball.
Yes, sir. Can't wait. Can't wait.
See you guys.
Thank you, Coach.
See you, Coach.
Coach
Thanks.
Mack gives us the Mac attack each week. Farm Bureau Health Plans making that happen. All right, we come back. Bud Dupree got dissed. Oh, look at Lucas. He's ready to give you the information on this. We'll tell you all.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
I ain't heard about this.
He better be better than what this thing says he's going to be. We'll be right back.
Adoree Jackson?
No. Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Don't forget 3HL live from SEC Media Days. You never know who they're going to run across. They just have a way of catching people, so you got to tune in 3 to 6 so you can hear all of it. I saw Justin Mello tweet this out earlier today. I'm not a big gamer guy. I got a 7-year-old son. He really wants it. He wants us to do that. So I said, okay, maybe Santa Claus will bring us both something that we could start gaming on. So I may be reaching out to some of you via Twitter to give me some suggestions, or Lucas. So Madden is something I'm keenly aware of, but like not necessarily everybody's rating. Like the dudes who play Madden all the time, you can mention anybody. You can mention some safety on the Cardinals. They're like, yeah, that guy's got an 84, whatever it is. Well, I saw Justin Mello tweeted this out earlier today, and I thought, I'm going to hold on to this. Justin, at Justin M _ NFL, Broadway Sports, Draft Network. We have him on quite a bit.
This is when they were talking about the receivers?
No, this is him talking about Bud Dupree. He tweeted this out. Titans edge Bud Dupree is a 74 overall in Madden 23. So I'm like, okay, all right. So then he said, here are other players who match his rating. Wide receiver Jalen Reagor, wide receiver Dante Pettis, middle linebacker Damian Wilson. You heard of any of these? I mean, Jalen Reagor.
Do they start?
Rookie wide receiver.
I'm assuming they do.
Wookie. He's not Chewbacca. Rookie wide receiver George Pickens, wide receiver Josh Gordon, wide receiver Jamal Agnew, and rookie edge George Karlaftis and Kiki Kute. There's a bunch of wide receivers, I guess, who have this. But George Karlaftis, who went to Purdue and didn't play in the bowl game against Tennessee, has the same rating on Madden as Bud Dupree.
Well, how many, that's kind of a stat thing. So what did he have? 3 sacks? What did he have? I don't know so that's what it's referring to. In all considerations, they don't go about impact and what he had an impact on the team when he played. They go about his stats and everything else. And so those numbers were way down after having, 9, 10 sack seasons. All of a sudden, your rating is going to go down.
You're right. 3 sacks.
Mm-hmm. So that's why he got a low rating. I think the 2 receivers, Woods as well as NWI Burks, had a low rating, even though they haven't, Burks hadn't played yet. I think the receivers had a low rating too, because these guys get a little bent out of shape about their rating.
Well, Look, here's the thing. You can tweet me and say, I don't like the way you do radio. I don't like your voice. I can't help it. But if you were like, hey, man, you're no better than somebody who just started yesterday, I'd be like, no, I'm better than that. I mean, I don't I don't take up for myself too. You're comparing this guy to a bunch of rookies. And Karlaftis, who might be a fine player, and I know there's, like you said, it's not looking at certain things. It's just a numeric formula they're trying to establish for everybody. This dude's cap hit is 19.2, and next year it's 20.2, and then it's 19.2, again it's 18.7. He signed a 5-year, $82.5 million contract. And it's funny. I mean, when we're talking about the defense, we're talking about a bunch of people and what's going to happen with the cornerbacks and can Farley be healthy. And, gosh, it'll be great to see a fully healthy Bud Dupree. That's kind of where, Bud Dupree is going to be fully healthy. But we really haven't talked much about what a fully healthy impact of Bud Dupree could be.
Well, I really don't know. I haven't seen that guy. And if we want to look back at his history of sacks, he's really a 9-sack guy.
Yeah.
I think that's what he was at the Steelers. And nothing against Bud Dupree, but remember, I didn't want them to sign, but I didn't, that's just how I was, because he had an ACL injury and it was late in the season. I would have signed him to a 1-year deal. I don't know how he got bamboozled. I think they can get out of this contract after this season, which really was a 2-year deal. They move forward. You just knew he wasn't going to be the same because how late it was and how explosive
December
he was as a player, and how that's the last thing to come back as a player from ACL. So I thought it was a huge risk. So we shall see what he really is now, because there's really a lot for him to play for, not only for his numbers, but then that helps the team and enhances him being on the team or getting a new contract, whether it's here or somewhere else. So, yeah, all those things. He's a really good player. I'm interested to see also, does he bring something new to the tool bag? Because I think now he's learned during playing with an injury that he couldn't, didn't have the get off that he normally has. So he had to start coming up with other ways. Where sometimes injuries can lead you down a road that you start, sooner than later. So did he learn some new pass rush moves to offset that, and has a great year. So I'm expecting big things. It's kind of under the radar, but I wasn't expecting a lot, to be honest.
Not last year.
No.
He did have an effect when he was on the field. I mean,
Right, but that's what we call an intrinsic effect.
yes, that.
Yeah, so but that don't bother. That don't. He did, but he didn't.
Right.
At the end of the day, to get in the Hall of Fame,
You need to be a stat-trinsic effect.
You're right.
Stats.
Yeah. Sorry. That's the way it goes. And we could say he was around the quarterback all day long, and so was Landry.
Yeah.
Until this year, he finally got to close the deal. And he did. And I wouldn't even say it was because it was contract year. It was just that's the way the cookie crumbles, and he just broke his way. And he was consistent, game in and game out. So nothing changed. Maybe the coverage was better. Maybe they mixed up coverages. Maybe just gave that half a second confusion, and they gave him, what he needed. So, yeah, if he plays up to the level that they think he can, he's a 10-sack guy. I think the sky's the limit. I'm still going to say, I know they keep saying it. They're never going to be better than the defense I was on. I hadn't said that yet. I was trying to give them their respect, but I don't. Not on air.
Are you ready to say it yet?
Yeah.
Did you just say it?
I just said it.
Oh.
They will not be better than our 2000 defense.
Not this year. Not any year.
If they can't do it this year, I don't think they're going to ever be able to do that. I mean, if you go down a laundry list of teams we were number one at.
I know. You got to tweet a picture of that clock out again with all that on there.
Yeah, they gave us a clock for that.
Because they know it's time for us to go. Because it's time for 3HL. He'll tweet out the picture of the clock again.
No.
You can see what all they did. We got to go, though, brother.
In the meantime.
In between time.
Clock it out.
Yeah.